I've been asked the question a lot, whether you should use auto or manual exposure settings. Now, normally I would say definitely always use manual exposure, that way you can achieve the look you're going for, because I've demonstrated in other videos that if you put it on auto, it's going to do weird things with your shutter speed, with your aperture, and with your ISO. Now, personally, I really like having the ability to achieve exactly the look that I'm going for. Whether I want a deep depth of field or a shallow depth of field, whether I want a lot of motion blur or no motion blur, I want to be able to control that. I don't want my camera to control those two things. And so I've been trying to figure out how can I have a semi-automatic exposure setting, and I figured it out. Now, this way of doing it is not going to allow you to make huge exposure changes, maybe only about 4 or 5 stops of exposure change. If you're walking from a dark room into bright sunlight, there's too much of a difference there for this hack to work. But if you're just standing like in the shade and then walking out into the sun, that's where this sort of technique really shines. Now, other than your camera and your lens, you're going to need one thing to make this work, and that is a variable neutral density filter. First of all, what you want to do is you want to set your camera to manual exposure mode. You have to go into your menus, first tab in the first section, the first option, and you'll see you have the option to switch from automatic to manual, and you want to go ahead and switch that to manual. Now, once it's in manual mode, then you want to adjust your shutter speed and your aperture to attain the look that you're going for. After that, you want to adjust your ISO down to 100, and then go into the more bright area of your setting, and then adjust that variable neutral density filter to get your correct exposure. And then, and this is where the magic happens, you set your ISO from 100 to auto. Step back into the darker shaded area, you'll notice that your exposure changes. I've been using this quite a bit recently because I haven't had as much time to plan my shots. I have needed to get quick shots without having to worry about the exposure. Whenever you see my exposure changing without me touching the camera, that's what's happening. It's just my ISO raising and lowering. Now, there is a few problems with doing it this way. Like I said already, you only have a very minimal amount of exposure changes that's available. It's not going to be the same as like using a fully automatic mode. Plus, as you get up to higher ISOs, then you start having problems with noise. So if you're going from a really bright area to a really dark area, the darker part of your clip is going to be a lot more noisy than the lighter part. Now, of course, the main point of doing this is not to get the best, most amazing footage, but to get footage quickly and easily. So in my opinion, if I'm doing this, I'm already not as worried about quality. Now, one thing you're going to want to do to minimize that noise issue is to go into your settings and adjust your ISO auto limit. And you want to adjust that all the way down to 6400. Now, the M50 does okay up to 6400, so that's how I would set it. I wouldn't want it to be able to go up all the way like 25,600 or something, because that's low enough quality. I'm just like, no. Now, when you're doing this, sometimes the camera will try to like expose for the sky or like expose for the shadows, and your face will be a little bit blown out. It doesn't have an intelligent way of telling that your face is supposed to be the subject of the shot. You're going to want to look at the bottom of your screen when you set your ISO to auto. Right next to the ISO button is an exposure compensation, and you can adjust that in third stop increments so you can brighten up or darken your footage to dial it in a little bit. And then if you have a scenario where you say go into a coffee shop, you don't think the exposure is going to change as much, and you don't want some freak thing to happen, like say someone walks by and it tries to expose for them. You want it to stay locked. If you see the little star button on the back of your camera, if you press that, that will lock your auto exposure point, and so it'll just stay wherever it is, and you won't constantly have a shift. And that's something else that I've done when using auto setting. Now, that is it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll see you all in the next video.